Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop Fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Tlodor Taratki is over. My friends, you bow to no one.
The eye of the enemy is moving. The end has come.
Every day, Frodo moves closer to Mordor. How do we know Frodo is alive? What does your heart tell you?
Come, Master. Come to Smeagol.
This is your test. Every path you have trod through wilderness, through war, has led to this road.
The enemy will never let Aragorn come to the throne of Gondor.
It is time. Give him the sword of the king.
Become who you were born to be.
The precious swimming hours.
He means to murder us! Never!
I'm not sending him away. Come to me.
Order set. The pieces are moving.
He is here.
We come to it at last.
I see in your eyes the same fear that would take the heart of me. A day may come when the courage of men fails. When we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship. But it is not this day.
Whatever happens, stay with me.
This day, we fight!
All you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you.
We shall see the Shire again.
You gave away your life's grace. I cannot protect you anymore.
We cannot achieve victory through strength of arms.
Not for ourselves.
But we can give Frodo a chance.
Andy, it's The Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. This is it. This is the finale of our 3-part review of the epic franchise extended edition of The Lord of the Rings. We have made it. We've made it to the last film. It is the longest film. Comes in at, what does it come in? 4:23 something, with probably 23 straight minutes of credits. I think that's about right.
It's hefty, let's just say. Yeah.
It's a hefty, hefty film. So this one picks up, especially the extended edition, picks up with a fantastic review of the history of Smeagol. And for that reason alone, I think this movie defines the purpose of doing extended editions. I think this movie is great.
That was all in there. Are you saying it wasn't?
It wasn't? It was? I thought that was new.
No. That was in there.
That was in the theatrical version?
It was. But
the whole history of Smeagol?
The whole history of Smeagol. What they added in that scene in the extended edition is a little more of the murder of Deagle.
Oh, good. That's what I mean.
Was a little,
more murdering.
And that was actually
That's, of course,
not
what I mean.
That was not a choice edit. That wasn't something that Jackson, from my understanding, that he chose to do. But the censors were like, he's strangling a little too long. Can we thin that out a little bit, or we'll have to give you an R rating? Yeah.
Well, I love it. I think it's fantastic, and I think this is a great way to get into this movie. How did it hit you, the 4-hour version this time around?
They're always just such a delight to watch, and the story is just, just kind of fills you up. There's just so much to it. It's such a rich story. It's just it's just so much going on. There really is, that it's just kind of an exciting thing to step into again and really kind of go through the entire experience of this entire story. I mean, I really enjoy kind of going through all the emotions that I feel with this. It's just, there's a lot of good stuff. So it's a favorite.
Do you have a particular emotion you'd like to begin with?
Well, since you started with the Smeagol-Deagle thing, I want to start there.
Oh, great.
Because one of the moments that it is a minor quibble that I have, and it's just a director's choice thing. It's not like they did something wrong, but there's something that always strikes me funny when I see Smeagol, who, as we know, becomes Gollum over the course of his time with the ring. His body mutates and transmorphs into the Gollum creature for whatever reason. The fact that the voice is the same always strikes me funny. And I feel like it makes sense as the Gollum voice, but when I see Andy Serkis doing the voice as Smeagol, I always like, did he always really talk that way? Couldn't that have been something that also changed with his look? Because I feel like I would have bought that a little bit.
Like, is that his voice box needed to get shriveled up and evil too?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, so we needed a before voice box.
Yeah, I just think
All right.
it just, I mean, is it something that's ever hit you?
Not until
funny,
just now. Not until just now.
That's funny.
Because I feel like the affectation comes in the form of his swallowing disorder. column. That's the part that is that he struggles with as a result of this transformation. I guess I never made the connection that his voice didn't change. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that.
Yeah.
It's just a minor thing. But it's something I always think about when I see him. I'm like, oh yeah, we've got to hear him talk as Andy Serkis as Gollum.
So, that's really funny. I did not think about it. He calls him my love. Do you think that's just an affectation of their friendship, or do you think at some point they're trying to indicate that Smeagol and Deagle are a unit?
I don't think that was. I can't imagine that would have been J.R.R. Tolkien's intention.
I'm sure it wasn't Tolkien's intention.
Yeah, I don't think. I think that's just his affectation. Okay. I mean, I was just in Texas, and I can't tell you how many times I was called sugar while I was there. It was just,
Andy, that's sweet.
just what they say. I know.
That's right, sugar.
I felt a little extra sweet.
I love it.
Hey, we started the last two talking about the extended editions and the extended scenes. Do you want to start there again with this one and just kind of?
I feel like I've already failed this because I've already thought that something that was in the theatrical was actually in there already. So yeah, I think we should start there. Get me up to speed.
Okay. There was a lot of like the last two. There are a lot of additions to scenes that have really kind of extended things out. But as far as the new scenes, I guess we'll just stick with those. The first one is perhaps one of the bigger ones, and that is the voice of Saruman. And that is this whole scene that had been shot and finished featuring Christopher Lee, where we have Gandalf, Aragorn, basically kind of the whole group from Helm's Deep. They now ride through the freshly replanted Fangorn forest and head up to Isengard, where they meet up with Treebeard, Merry, and Pippin. And they have this confrontation with Saruman. And this is this whole thing that they had shot. They put it in here, and then they decided, time-wise, if we cut it, it'll still be fine. Because that was one of those things, like Christopher Lee was completely excised from this film for its theatrical release. And so Here we are getting this again. I mean, how does this scene play for you? Do you like this, the way that we have this moment with Saruman here, and we get to see how Gandalf gets the Palantir, etc.?
Yeah, I actually really do. And I think it ties nicely to the later scene, particularly around Pippin grabbing the Palantir later. Like, it's nice to see that he already had a connection with it here. First of all, I think the scene is actually well written. I like the use of language in this sequence when they talk back and forth to one another. And, his fall, landing on the sort of water wheel and being dragged into the water upside down is dramatic, and I don't have an issue with it. I think it's a great addition. I don't know that I necessarily missed it. It's not one of those scenes that I think dramatically makes this better, but I certainly don't think that there is any that there's a problem with it.
I really like having the scene back. I like that Saruman is still working to do what he can to get into their heads. And it also gives a great moment to see how Gandalf has now kind of moved into the position of authority. And you really get that sense that he is now more powerful than Saruman. And the story that I always find most interesting about this scene is when Wormtongue stabs Saruman in the back. The whole story with that is that because Christopher Lee had, served in the war, and he said he had seen people killed by getting stabbed in the back. And so Peter Jackson, when he was telling him that he's going to stab you he'll stab you in the back and you just need to go, or something like that. And Christopher's like, no, that's not how somebody who gets stabbed in the back sounds. I know how it sounds. And so
it's grim, Chris, grim.
Very grim. But that was the story that kind of goes along with that. I found that to be a pretty interesting story, which is another reason that I like it, just because it gives a little more gravitas to the moment.
Yes. Yeah, I think so too. I like the scene. I do think the scale is in some cases a little bit off, but I like the idea that these wizards can talk to one another at normal voice and hear each other from the great height.
Yeah,
I think that is really, really fun. Like, apparently, wizards can hear anyone and project.
They're really good at projecting their
wizards.
voices. Yeah, exactly.
It's perfect. I like it, and I like that it sets up here. I like because the Pippin and Merry and Pippin eating sequence, their whole thing where they're sitting back eating and drinking, was that in the theatrical?
Yeah, just when everybody arrives and Gimli's all upset that they're drinking and smoking. Yeah, so that is all. I mean, this whole thing was. They arrive. I think what we get is they arrive to the water, and the entire part with the tower is cut out. They just kind of go through the process of, hey, we're all reunited. Pippin finds the Palantir in the water, and that's kind of the end of it. But they cut everything with the tower. So, all right. Next up, I'm going to read through a few of these quick because they're, unless you want to specifically talk about them. But The Decline of Gondor, The Wizard's Pupil, Peregrine of the Tower Guard, The Corsairs of Umbar, that's seeing bits of the boat, Mary's Simple Courage, The Tomb of the Stewards, The Witch King's Hour, The Houses of Healing, Aragorn Masters the Palantir, The Captain and the White Lady, In the Company of Orcs, The Mouth of Sauron. The Mouth of Sauron is probably the other big one that people talk about here. I mean, I know like the Witch King's Hour, that's when the Witch King comes and lands on the castle and confronts Gandalf. And that's how Gandalf's staff disappears. Like, we see him riding off with his staff to go save Faramir from Denethor's fire. And once he gets there, he doesn't have it anymore.
He doesn't have a staff.
In the theatrical version. And so that's it. We get to see how they lost that. But the other big one that I suppose has caused some controversy, I guess, is The Mouth of Sauron. And that's really just because I think some people were like, I don't know if I like how that looks. But I love how that character looks. And I love the way that it plays, and the way that, just like Saruman, it's this mouth character, but it's always listening for any clue that it can have that what it's saying is getting to somebody. And so when it shows the mithril coat, and it gets that clue that Merry and Pippin are, they realize Frodo's gone, it uses that against them. I really enjoy the way that whole scene plays.
I actually don't have a problem with The Mouth of Sauron either. I think it's just fine. I really, there's nothing. In fact, in the entire list of things that you brought up here, I don't have a problem with any of them. I do wonder because, and I'll bring up again, because I feel like there was some controversy around how Faramir is handled in this movie, and I'm curious if you have a good reason for me to hate Faramir in this movie. As of right now, I don't.
I don't have any reason to hate him either. I think it's fine what they did. They came up with a way to just integrate him a little bit more once he's saved by Gandalf and Pippin. He ends up in like a house of healing, and that's where he ends up, next to Eowyn, who's also in the House of Healing after having defeated the Witch King. Yeah, and so then we kind of have their little romance, which is one of those things that I think they largely wanted to put in because, again, just trying to give these characters a little more. They didn't want to just drop Faramir off the map after he was saved. They didn't want to drop Eowyn off the map after she had defeated the Witch King. It's like those sorts of things. What can we do with those characters to just kind of give them a little more? And I suppose a resolution to the love triangle that we had. It doesn't bug me. I kind of enjoy that resolution.
I guess it's fine. I guess if so, the handling of I think if there's anything that I need more of, it's the love triangle. The fact that she comes up to Faramir and they get connected. When I feel like her part of the love triangle is flimsy. She's a flibbertigibbet. She's all over the place. It feels like to me. Like that's pretty thin.
But he looks at her with such loving eyes, Pete.
They are so loving. I'm in love with them at the end of it. For crying out loud. The problem that I have, if I had a problem, it would probably be around how the steward himself, like, being so obtuse the entire time. Like I feel like he was instructed to portray this as if he was couldn't hear anyone else around him. He feels like he's in a different movie. He's just mad at everything and so mad that he's gonna he's okay, killing his own son and being ignorant of all those who are saying anything to him. And I feel like that is such an obtuse character just to get to the point where he dramatically is lit on fire and throws himself off of the wall. It's not that I hate that part. It's that I recognize how dumb he is as a character. And I feel like he was written that way intentionally. And so I give it enough grace. He is an ugly character, and maybe we just need him to be an ugly character. I don't like him, and I think I'm meant not to like him and like what he represents, but it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch because I'm on that line. It does, I think, to some extent, take me out of the movie. You?
I don't have any issues with it. And I think a lot of it is because he comes very much from the book that way. And actually, in the book, I think Tolkien makes it somewhat clear that he knows Faramir is not dead. And I think, if anything, the book or the film gives a little more of a sense where he actually is kind of in a mental state where he doesn't quite realize it.
Yeah.
But what's happened is, I think it's important to just remember that he has been using the Palantir, and so he has been kind of taken in many ways by Sauron, and has like this great fear of Sauron coming, and now Aragorn is showing himself. And I think the way that he is portrayed in the story is that this is a person who really, I kind of look at it almost, which is a weird way, but like mercury poisoning. Like you look at like the madness of King George or something like that. It's like, this is the madness of Sauron, who has gotten into his head and completely repainted how he sees absolutely everything. And when he has that moment where everything is coming down, he's just like, hell, I screwed it all up. Well, I guess I'm just going to, we're going to burn us all and it's all going to be over.
Yeah.
And I think that's really how I view that, is that he's at this point where he's just completely feels like he's failed and he's just going to tear it all down now.
That's an interesting way to look at it. I think a gracious way to look at it. I think my challenge is what I want out of that character, and what I think we got more of out of the book was that he was on parallel with Theoden. Like it was Theoden and Gandalf and Aragorn and Denethor, the Steward of Gondor. And here we are. These people need to play off of one another. And of those four, he is given the least to do. All we get is his crazy. And that is the part I think that I end up missing, that it's just the crazy absent the meat and substance that we could have gotten. And part of that, I think, is because we get to him so late in his story. Like, we haven't gotten to see too much of, apart from stuff that was added in the extended edition in the last movie, which wasn't a lot. We haven't gotten to see a lot of who he is and what he represents. And so I think the argument is, do we have enough in the movie? In the extended edition, does it add enough to kind of make the movie? I think when I'm watching the movie, this is the only part of this movie where I stop and I think this character isn't enough. All we're getting is one-dimensionality, and I think there could be more. It just feels a little bit empty.
I don't know if I'd say it's one-dimensional. I think there's a lot of different emotions that he's portraying here, and I find it to be interesting. I get that this is one of those characters that is contentious a little bit as far as how people view it, but I think there's a lot of pride that he has in the fact that he wants to show that he can actually work as the steward and is doing a good job. Also, the sense of failure that he has. Like, I feel like there's a lot of really interesting things, and you have scenes like when he asks Pippin to sing that song for him as he's eating, and just like, I don't know, I just feel like we're watching this character like go through this breakdown. And I don't know, I feel like it's subtle, but I do think that there's really interesting kind of this dark journey that he goes on, descending into further madness.
Well, and I will add, since you brought up the song, that Pippin, Billy Boyd's got pipes. He sounds great. I love that song. I want him to sing me to sleep.
Oh yeah, here he does that. Did one of the songs in the was it the third of the Hobbit films? He sings the songs, and yeah, I mean he's great.
Yeah.
So So that's pretty much the rundown of the extended scenes. That gives us a sense as to, what they added to really flesh this out. And again, of course, 1.5 miles of names of the fan club at the end of the credits. So that really fleshes things out.
So in terms of the other, I think, big character that we've already talked about him in the opening when he's actually we get to see him live action. We're talking about Andy Serkis's Gollum. That is another character that has evolved yet again from the last movie to this one in terms of character portrayal and CG and all of that. What's your take on the evolution of Gollum?
I mean, we had really seen the big turn for Gollum in the last film, right? That was the second film is really the journey that we have of the two halves of Gollum battling with one another, trying to, I mean, I guess you could say the Smeagol side of Gollum trying to eventually coming out and befriending Frodo and wanting to help. And then by the time we get to the end of that film, feeling betrayed, and the Gollum side has now taken over, and it is full on dark and evil and twisted, and kind of gone back to where it had been when he first showed up in this film, in this franchise. And so this film largely is the dark Gollum. It's really like, I guess it's not as much a journey for this particular character. Like, he has now decided he's going to work to do everything he can to make Sam look like Sam is the problem, so that Frodo and Sam kind of create that rift between the two of them and get Frodo trapped and caught by the spider and make off with the ring. And of course, things don't necessarily go completely the way he wants, and of course, it builds to the end, which is fantastic. I do always wonder, of course, it's just the nature of the story in the first place. Like, how does Gollum go from wherever he fell all the way to the volcano? Like, was he still tracking them in some capacity? I'd love to kind of get the one-shot version of Gollum's story.
The GPS coordinates at a minimum.
Because, I mean, he also would have to navigate across Mordor past all of the armies and everything.
Yeah, right. But he's very sneaky.
He is very sneaky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, Andy Serkis does a great job, and I think it just continues as a fantastic character and an introduction to this exciting technology evolved with motion capture.
Yeah, and I think in terms of placement of Gollum in scene, I think it is it's a triumph. Like, I think I can get completely lost in the portrayal of this character in this movie, along with the hobbits. And I think if you take out all of the battle at Minas Tirith and just show me, in this case, the hobbit's journey to Mordor and to the volcano and to the very bitter end, I'm in it all the way. Like, I think it's really, really great. And this is coming from the last movie where I felt like some of this stuff was a little bit of a slog. Here, I love it. I love the Shelob stuff. I love everything about that. And part of that is also because the animated version, I think this was the Bakshi one, where they actually have the tower sequence after, Shelob has incapacitated Frodo. I have a really visceral memory of that, so I get so excited every time I come to that sequence in this movie. I just love it. The orc fight, everything is great. It's also, I think, because this movie makes it such a character piece, the CG, that I'm able to get lost in a lot of the humanity of their interactions in this movie. And then we get to Minas Tirith, and it is such it's taking Helm's Deep and leveling it up with elephants that I feel a little bit like, okay, I'm in a parade now and it's going to be awesome. I can accept it for what it is, but it's a parade of digital bits in a way that the last movie, even with all of the digital duplication of orcs, was not. Does that make any sense? Like, it just feels great. I love it. It's a great action scene. But this movie feels like everything I loved about Lord of the Ring, or about Fellowship of the Ring, with a massive adrenal shot that might, I don't know if that's in great service of it. It doesn't feel as grounded when we get to the biggest pieces. And I know that, Viggo Mortensen has come out and said similar stuff. And, I just read, I think Brian had shared with me the thread on Reddit that sort of pulls apart Viggo Mortensen's quotes, and so I was reading it before we got into this thing. And I think he's talking about it in terms of what CG allows directors to do, and then when they get so excited, they get sort of high on their own supply. And I feel like the difference between Fellowship of the Ring and Return of the King, and then incredibly so The Hobbit, trilogy exemplifies that. So I'm curious if you have any sort of second thoughts on this viewing about, the biggest visual sequences.
There are a few ways to approach that, I suppose. And the first is when you're looking at a story and, conceiving this as one single story, as things build over the course of your story, by the time you're getting to the end, things will be the biggest. And I mean, that's just kind of the nature of stories, right? So by the time we get to this particular part of this trilogy, yes, things are going to be bigger. These armies are going to be huge, and we're going to have so many more things. I mean, it's not just orcs and Uruk-hai and humans and elves and trolls and dwarves, but then we have the Oliphants running around in there. We have all this whole army of the dead. We have all the people coming up in the boats before the army of the dead. Like, there are so many things happening that really it brings a lot to the scope of this battle. And yeah, when you're watching a movie like this, that's what you want. You want it to build to this place where we're getting the biggest fights at the end. And so it is very much how the book is written. It's not like Jackson decided to move things around or change things specifically. Like, this is pretty much how the book goes. Like, by the time we get to the end on the fields of Pelennor, that's kind of what we're looking at here, where we have all of this stuff actually happening there. And we have Gimli and Legolas running around counting how many people they've killed and stuff. And so it's all there. The scope of this film, I really have no issues with. In fact, to a certain extent, I appreciate more what Jackson is doing here than I did with, like, the wire rig through the forest shot that we have at the end of Fellowship of the Ring, which always feels a little funky to me. And it seems a little weirdly mechanical. The way that the CG battle is happening, I mean, there are shots that I'm like, okay, did I need to see Legolas jump up and like the way that he swings up the Oliphant along his arrows that he's penetrated its skin with all the way up to its head, killing the people, and then bringing the Oliphant down and then sliding down and like surfing off of its trunk as it dies right behind him.
Which is really great that you bring that up, because that's case example number one of excessive use of this stuff.
Absolutely. But I think to a certain extent, you get to a point where this series, we're, again, considering this as kind of one big film, we're getting to this point where we've had all of these builds and everything. And that was a great moment to give us some cool Legolas moves, and we can see him as an elf doing some really cool stuff. And then, of course, it pays off with the joke between him and Gimli, where Gimli is that still only counts as one. And, I appreciate what they're doing there, and I don't mind really any of what's going on through the end of this. In fact, I think in the scope of what Jackson is doing, I think this is the best example that he's had of giving us a big CG battle where we have lots of things going on. And I think he's managing it very well. I do think, to your point, once we get past this and into the Hobbit films, I think when we get to that big battle at the end, Battle of Five Armies, that's one where there is a lot of stuff happening where it's like, okay, we're creating maybe too many sequences just to have a big action beat. I don't have any issue with any of it going on in this film.
It's easy to let the impression of what's going on at the end of this movie be colored by what we know it comes after. And it's not just the Hobbit, right? Examples of the Hobbit for, action beats' sake, but also like, let's do it and push forward for theatrical, 48 frames per second. And let's push every lever to 11 at the expense of story. And I think, to your point, if your objective as a filmmaker is to do the highest fidelity adaptation of a property you love in the form of the Lord of the Rings book, and you have these tools with which to do it, you use the tools, right? The Oliphant and the Army of the Dead. Like, I think the Army of the Dead stuff works terrifically. And arguably, some of that technology has been around for decades and decades and decades, like being able to do that sort of compositing. Here he did it very, very well. I think it's lovely. All of that stuff adds to big dramatic moments. I think some of the comedy, like you bring up the Legolas swinging around on the Oliphant, and some of that it just doesn't work. On the other hand, with the Oliphants and their great big barbed, chains across their tusks, sweeping across the battlefield, is extraordinarily cool and vicious and violent, and it's what I would expect in a battle scene like this. So I guess I'm of two minds on it. I think that the way the battle is executed is great, and I also think this is like, step 3 in Jackson's long march toward potentially, again, getting high on his own supply.
Yeah, I guess it is one of those things. It really does boil down to like how, are you buying into it? Yeah. But to that end, I think it's easy to see the line from action sequences like this that he's doing here to something like Avengers Endgame, where you have a huge action sequence with hundreds of people all doing different tasks and kind of working across a giant field in which they're all working. And I think that's an interesting element that you can really see how the sort of epic storytelling in those final confrontations has really kind of grown. And we could go back in time also, but I think once you start really building the CG versions of it, this seems to be probably where it kind of kicks off as far as what, Jackson showed to modern action epic fantasy filmmakers what you could do in these big battle sequences. Even James Cameron in the Avatar films.
Yeah, right.
I think just the nature of the beast. And to that end, it's going to boil down to how the director is doing it, how they've crafted the sequences to play, and really kind of a lot of what their second unit teams are doing to kind of fill in all the details.
Well, and I think it's important to recognize that to me also, it's the biggest moments in this movie, the dizzying, sweeping, giant moments in this movie that actually make the smallest moments that much better, right? The quiet moments, the my friends, you bow to no one moments that are just a character looking at other characters and having an actual performative moment. And I think those are so lovely in this movie. They are absolutely outshine and come as the summation of everything that we've seen before in the last, 11 hours of the movie. The last hour makes good in this movie. I think it's really, really terrific. And so much of that comes because of the balance of the big stuff. And that's what the greatest movies do.
Well, now that you bring that up, I'm curious where you stand on the whole issue where people complained that this film has too many endings.
Yeah, I don't. I feel like it has too many endings to me. Not at all. Because I think every single thread needs an ending, right? Like, we have a lot of characters. Everything has to end. So let's, in all fairness, end them. And I actually think it works very well for me. Do you? My assumption is you're on team it's okay.
Oh, I'm 100% on team it's okay. Like, I love every bit of this. I would have made it longer if I could have. I love being in this world. And I think Jackson did such an exceptional job of crafting the story. And I don't have those issues. I think the argument for some people isn't necessarily that there are too many endings, but that they feel like the way that Jackson directed it and edited it, it feels like, oh, it's ending. Oh, it's not ending. Oh, okay. Oh, wait. Okay. This is the ending. Oh, wait, no, it's not the ending. There's more still.
I'm going to say controversial thing. Like, until I read this complaint preparing for this show, I've never felt that or heard it from anybody. And now it's everywhere. Of course, it's everywhere.
It's been everywhere, Pete.
Yeah,
It didn't just start in 2023.
But
Suddenly people are like...
too many endings. It has been so far from my concept of this movie because I love the way every story gets an ending. I don't love all the endings, but I love the way every story gets an ending.
Yeah.
Spoiler, I have one that I don't like.
Uh-oh.
I know.
Okay. Did you want to say what it is, or do you just want to not tell people?
I don't love it that Frodo gets on the boat. I don't feel like that's earned, and I've never felt like that's earned. Like, in the story.
What do you mean it's not earned?
Because Bilbo went on a very similar journey and got real old because he took the ring off. But he gets to go get on the boat. He gets to go be on the boat. Bilbo's earned being on the boat. He had a whole full life. I don't believe Frodo had a whole full life. He had an adventure that lasted 13 months. That was not, I mean, okay, you carried the ring, you put it in the volcano, you're fine now, you look fine. Go have a life, farm some turnips, hang out with Sam. I wasn't done with Frodo.
Do you feel that way in the book too?
Yeah, I've always felt that way.
Huh, okay.
I think that's dumb. That's a Tolkien challenge that I have, and I don't like it. And I think on film it's made worse for me because Elijah Wood still looks great. He looks like he's ready to get up and start doing some hoeing and farming and reaping.
He can do that in the Grey Havens. It's not like they go and fall off the edge of the planet and die.
We don't know what the Grey Havens are. What are the Grey Havens? Tell me what the Grey Havens are. I think they're dead. That's like they go and they become spirit people. That's a new transformation.
They just go live in a different place. I love it. I love it. And I mean, I always felt that it worked incredibly well. I mean, sure, Bilbo carried the ring for a very long time, but let's be honest. Sauron wasn't after it. It was just kind of in his pocket. He's like, I'm going to be invisible now. I'm going to not be invisible now. And he never, ever had to deal with the confrontation of the giant I am Sauron or go through the emotional turmoil that poor Frodo had to deal with. His life was pretty okay. And so I think that it's all right.
He had a dragon. There was a dragon. His Sauron was the dragon.
There's a difference with the mental anguish of of dealing with Sauron through the ring. Anyway,
all right, that's fair.
What do you think about? We talked a little bit about the treatment of women in the films up to this point, and especially in the last film where it really felt more of Tolkien's era as far as writing the book, the way that kind of women were meant to stay behind and to take care of things, and the men would go off and fight. But then we have Éowyn in this film who disguises herself as a man along with Merry, and they go and join the fight, and she ends up killing the Witch King with her very convenient line, "I am no man," as she drives the sword into his face. I mean, it plays so incredibly well. I love the way that it works. As a moment, and just in the scope of what we're getting and what Jackson, Walsh, and Boyens really tried to do with the script to kind of give more to the female characters in a story that really doesn't do much for female characters. I mean, how do you feel that it ends up playing in this film?
Well, first of all, the only thing that I think of when she says, "I am no man," is that there's the sword hanging out of the Witch King's face, and the Witch King actually says, "Okay, all right, I know, we weren't specific enough. I meant no human. No human. Just get that thing out of my face." Like, I have this entire scene that plays out where he tries to correct. You've thought about this
quite a bit.
I've thought about this before because I don't love that feels cheap. That feels like a cheap twist today. Maybe it would have felt different when I first saw it. I don't know. It just feels like sort of low hanging fruit writing to me. It's a good line and a dramatic beat, but in terms of the arc of feminism in this movie, it's a small contribution to the coffers. I do think what they were trying to do here, they succeed with doing in an adaptation that is not kind to female characters, right? I mean, this is the book was not kind overall to female characters, as in there weren't very many of them. And so I think they did fine here. I think we have, what's her name? Liv Tyler. It has not much representation in this film, and Éowyn is a flibbertigibbet of romance and battle. And I like her. I like her well enough. She's kind of all over the place. The best part of her angle is that she puts on the helmet and then grabs Merry and they go off to battle together. And I like that this is a whole horse full of those who are underrepresented in some way, underappreciated in some way. And I think that is a really awesome contribution, but the film can only do so much.
To that end, I think they're doing the best that they can with the story that they're working with. And so to that end,
yeah.
I quite like it. And I think that moment with Éowyn, actually, I really enjoy it. It always hits me.
The no man. I am no man.
Yeah. I mean, just the way that the whole scene is constructed with her delivery and everything.
Yeah.
And then the way that flippin' thing like implodes, I just think is so cool. Like,
it's
like
cool
all
effect.
of that is, the whole thing is such a great moment. So I love it.
Yes.
So, all right. So but what about the cave trolls, Pete?
Andy, I've been waiting. I am surprised that we got 40 minutes into this conversation for you to actually bring up use and abuse of trolls in this movie.
And Oliphants, let's just say.
Yeah.
Which, we haven't really had the abuse of Oliphants until this film. But the cave trolls, yeah, I mean, Gandalf even has a point where I had to write it down because I was laughing so much, where he screams out, "Aim for the trolls! Kill the trolls!" I was like, oh, Gandalf, even you.
And too, Gandalf?
That's right. Oh, those poor cave trolls. They didn't want to be there.
But I think you watch those Oliphants. I think the Oliphants wanted to be there. I think they were willing participants in the battle.
I think that they were having some serious fun, just crushing everybody. I love the Oliphants in this. They're just fantastically created. I love how it's like an elephant blended in with kind of like this mastodon type of creature. Like they really decide to go
6 tusks.
Insanely large.
So good.
So good. So good.
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about Jacksonisms in kind of the past couple episodes. Is there anything in this one that really stands out as like that really felt like a Peter Jackson flourish in the way that he was kind of crafting things?
Well, I'm just wondering if this isn't a greatest hits of all Jacksonisms, right? Like I feel like so much of this movie is that. Like, how many times do we get the hard cut to a close-up on a character's face in shock, flashback to violence having just passed in movies past? Like, it just feels like those pushes into crystal clear eyeballs are extraordinary uses of Jackson camera. And
with wide-angle lenses.
With wide-angle lenses.
Like, I think that he really loves those real close-ups with wide-angle lenses that really kind of gives a little bit of that distortion and everything.
Absolutely. And this movie is
always kind of slightly Dutch too. So I mean, it's funny though. I really do need to go back and rewatch some of his non-Middle Earth films because I'm just so curious, like how much of that is him versus how much of that he really wanted to just specifically imbue in these stories. So
like and even especially the movies after, because I want to know how much is habit, like Lovely Bones, right? Let's go back and look at Lovely Bones and see how much is Jackson habit with camera versus, because it's been a long time since I've seen that.
And I've never seen that one. So I mean, honestly, it's only the only two options we really have are King Kong and The Lovely Bones, because he hasn't done, those are the only two films he did, and those are both between the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Hobbit trilogy. And then since then, it's just been documentaries. So, it's interesting how his career has shifted so much.
That was interesting, that World War I documentary. He took all the footage and made it, normal, and he also made it all Dutch angles. All the soldiers' cameras are now Dutch angled. That was his contribution to the war effort.
Oh my God.
Dramatic angles.
Do you have any particular moments in this film that are like, oh, that is one of my highlights for this particular film?
The Shelob bit, I have to come back to the Shelob bit because, and again, so much of it is the chase and the fight and Sam's rescue. And speaking of the close up to Frodo's on Wood's face as he is pierced by Shelob, and the white comes out of his mouth so slowly. It is like a perfect combination of dramatic and extensive CG effects and great performance and horror. Like, I think all of the character work is fantastic. I think Sam's rescue is fantastic. Like, that whole sequence is great. Following up on that with my favorite sequence in the movie, which is Sam's climbing the tower and the orcs fighting themselves. That orc instant animosity, which I guess is a follow-up a little bit to the last movie where we were talking a little bit about the Uruk-hai orc issues. I don't know that was really made clear that this might have been based on Uruk-hai animosity in the tower that sort of spurred it. That it was maybe more greed, but
that seemed to be the two who were pissed at each other.
Yeah, who started it, right? It just made it easier to fight. But so I think that is definitely a highlight for me above the entire Minas Tirith battle sequence. Like that sequence going from the dark passageway Shelob to climbing the tower. I'm here for all of that. 100%. What about you?
I mean, absolutely that. And it's interesting, just following up on our conversation from the last film, knowing how long it actually even takes in this film to get to the Shelob sequence. It's like, how could that...
Yes.
Like, once you've seen this film, you're like, that would never have fit in at the end of the Two Towers. Like, that would have been another hour-long film. They just couldn't have done it time-wise. But
I'm trying to look at, because by the time they dress in the orc outfit and join and kind of get down and get pulled into the ranks. So this is Shelob, the tower climb, they collect their clothes, and they are now back up.
Two Towers ends where Sam realizes that Frodo's alive. And so Frodo's been taken off to the tower, and that's kind of the end of their story in the Two Towers.
Right. And I was just talking about the movie. Like, at that point, there is still an hour and 18 minutes of movie left. And my memory of it is consistently, even right after I've seen it, that The Lord of the Rings picks up right at the beginning of that sequence.
Yeah, right.
There's so much movie in this movie.
Yeah, it's a big one. So some of my favorite sequences, one is the lighting of the beacons, which just always excites me. In fact, in such a way where I had to go back, because I'm like, I don't even remember that in the book. I had to go reread it and go, oh, it's like this one paragraph. But it's something that I guess when I read it, I never quite visualized it the way that they ended up doing it in the book. I was just like, oh, okay, they just light something to let them know. Like, I don't think I contextualized what that really entailed. And so the way that they portrayed that in the book just gets, really excites me. Plus with Howard Shore's music. I mean, Howard Shore's music, just add that to every single thing I say about this movie. Plus Howard Shore's music. Yeah. So that, and then, but I think, one of my all-time favorite moments, is though when they're on the walk up Mount Doom, and Frodo can't walk anymore, and then Sam has to pick Frodo up and carry him up. And
I can't carry it, but I can carry you. Oh, Andy. I also would like to have, just back to your beacons point, I'd like to have beacons that we could light between us, just between Portland and Phoenix. What do you think that would take? How far do you think they went across the mountains? Right.
That's a good question. Probably... How far is Minas Tirith from
Rohan?
Rohan, yeah.
Yeah. I would like to see what we could do about that. I don't know that it's strictly legal to just have massive pyres.
I feel like there's
across Utah and Nevada.
A lot of dry areas between here and there that they probably aren't going to want large open fires.
Yeah, I think actually the beacon is called Oregon in summer. It's not great. That's a terrible joke. I regret saying it already.
Oh my God, so funny.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty bad.
One last little thing I wanted to ask you about.
Sure.
What do you think we haven't talked about the songs really at all in these films. What do you think of the 3 songs that we end up getting to close the films?
I don't have a strong opinion of the song. I can't even place the songs to close these films. In fact, the only song that I can place from any of these properties at the end of the show is actually from the end of one of the Hobbit movies. I think it might be Desolation of Smaug. It's the Ed Sheeran song, I See Fire, because that was a real chart topper. But I don't even remember the songs in these movies. What are the songs?
Well, we have "Let It Be" by Enya at the end of Fellowship.
Oh, yeah, I know
so
that's
the first one. Mm-hmm. The second, the Two Towers is the one that I always forget. It's the one that doesn't stick with me nearly as well, and that one is called Gollum's Song, performed by Emiliana Torrini.
Okay,
which is definitely a darker song. And then, of course, we have Annie Lennox, Into the West, with this one.
Yeah, I'm listening to that right now. Yeah. They're lovely. I don't have a strong opinion of them.
The Annie Lennox Into the West song just gets me. I mean, that song is like the perfect way to end this franchise. Like, the song just, I feel like it takes you into the Grey Havens. Like, I think that it's a great way to end the story.
And the Grey Havens are, just to confirm, to the west, right?
Yes, into the west. You're not dying, you're not going off a cliff.
It'd be funny if they were to the slight south-southeast. But it's the only song we had the rights to.
All right. Well, I think that's about it. Any last thoughts from you?
Yeah. I love this movie. I love this movie, and I have a great time with it. And I feel like all of my complaints and quibbles should really be reserved for the Lord of the Rings Return of the King Extended Edition by Minute podcast, because all of that stuff would be worth litigating there. For our purposes, it's great.
All right, well, we'll be right back, but first, our credits.
The next reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Tillman Selescu, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. Okay, sequels and remakes. Has anybody decided to remake this yet?
Not yet, but, you never know. You never know. One day, maybe someone will. Obviously, we had the Hobbit trilogy made from 2012 to 2014 by Peter Jackson. That whole trilogy, which originally was one film and then two films, and then it ended up being three films. And, we've talked about most of that on the film board. So you can listen to those episodes if you want to hear people having conversations about those films. There actually is in the works for next year, 2024, a standalone animated prequel film to this called The War of the Rohirrim, to be directed by Kenji Kamiyama. Miranda Otto is at this point the only person who is reprising her role, and that is as the narrator. I think that sounds interesting. I'm curious as to what that's going to be about. Kind of a feature animated story set 183 years before the events of the Two Towers. Tells the story of Helm Hammerhand, the legendary king of Rohan, who must defend against an army of Dunlendings. He becomes the namesake for the stronghold of Helm's Deep.
Who has that? Is that another Amazon production?
It is New Line Cinema, Warner Brothers Animation. Warner Brothers Pictures is going to be distributing that next April.
That's fascinating. Okay.
Yeah. Brian Cox is playing Helm God, these names. Helm Hammerhand. I tell you. So those, and then on top of that, of course, so many video games to play. And, of course, the Amazon TV show, The Rings of Power, which has had plenty of controversy. We'll see what ends up happening with that. A lot of arguments about how they've been spending their money and what they've been delivering. So we'll see what ends up happening if they can get that finished.
I believe they've confirmed another season.
Oh yeah, I believe they have. I definitely enjoyed it. It's
Me
just
too.
one of those things that I'm quite surprised that it's caused such controversy.
Yeah. More than anything else, I think that's the question.
Well, and unfortunately, a lot of the controversy is like, oh, dwarves are all these characters should be white. And that's a lot of the arguments and, a lot of those people out there. Yeah.
How to do it award season. This was finally it, right?
Oh, my goodness. This was very popular. 213 wins with 124 other nominations.
Wow.
And so very, very good job. It was nominated for 11 Oscars, and it won them all. It won all 11 of them. In fact, that makes it tie with Titanic and Ben-Hur for the highest number of Academy Award wins. They both also won 11. But it also now holds the record for the highest clean sweep at the Oscars, winning everything that it was nominated for. It won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Film Editing, Best Art Direction, Set Decoration, Best Costume Design, Best Makeup, Best Original Score, Best Original Song, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Visual Effects. So, yeah, very popular at the Oscars.
Yeah, very popular.
Again, I think a lot of it was people not giving as many awards to the previous two films because they were like, I'll just save my votes for the third one, which, I think is kind of lame, but what are you going to do?
Lame, but at least they finally ended up with something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
At the Saturn Awards, it had 13 nominations. It won for Best Fantasy Film, Best Director. Elijah Wood won for Best Actor. Sean Astin won for Best Supporting Actor. It also won Best Writing, Best Makeup, Best Music, and Best Special Effects. Viggo Mortensen was nominated for Best Actor, but lost to Elijah Wood. And both Ian McKellen and Andy Serkis were nominated for Supporting Actor, but lost to Sean Astin. Best Costumes was nominated but lost to Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. And Miranda Otto was nominated for Best Supporting Actress, but lost to Ellen DeGeneres in Finding Nemo.
Okay.
Last but not least, over at the Guinness Book of World Records, we've been talking about this. This is, I already mentioned the tie for the most Oscars won by a film. Interestingly, it also holds the record for the longest title of a movie to win an Oscar for Best Picture, if you include the name of the trilogy, which is how it's titled, The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. That is actually 36 characters. If you exclude the title of the trilogy, then the record is Around the World in 80 Days and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, both having 26 characters in their titles. So many, it's crazy what the Guinness Book of the World Records has in it. Like, seriously, lots of things.
I wonder if on that one, there was better stuff to do with their time.
Well, the trilogy did, as we've discussed, also holds the record for largest battle sequences on film. It also holds the award for most Visual Effects Society awards won by a movie series.
All right. Deserve it. I think they look great. All of them. None of them feel particularly dated or aged to me. How to do at the box office.
Well, Jackson's final piece of his Middle-earth story cost around $94 million, or just over $153 million in today's dollars. Continuing the third Friday in December release strategy, this opened December 17th, 2003, opposite Something's Gotta Give, Stuck on You, Love Don't Cost a Thing, Blizzard, and the limited release of Girl with a Pearl Earring. The movie opened in the number one spot, which, like the last one, it held for 10 straight weeks. It had another Oscar bump, pushing it back into the top 10 for 2 weeks, and it went on to earn $378.2 million domestically and $768.2 million internationally, for a total gross of almost $1.9 billion in today's dollars. That gives the film an adjusted profit per finished minute of $8.5 million, earning back more than 12 times its budget and making it the most profitable of the three films. All told, Jackson proved his plan would work and set a high bar for everyone following him.
Wow.
Right?
That's some bucks.
Yeah, just a few.
Jeez.
Just a few bucks.
Times his budget. Yeah. Well, all right. I'm glad we did it. This is three films. We've done it. We're done with it. There's no more. We're not doing The Hobbit.
Yet.
We're done with The Lord of the Rings. Is that a threat?
Hey, you never know.
I think you just threatened me.
Just don't say never. Never say never. Oh. No, I love this one. This is in my top 5 films, Pete.
Top 5. This one. Are any of the other 2 in your top 5 films? Is your top 5 films these 3 films plus 2 more?
No, this is the one. This is my favorite of the 3.
Okay. It might be my favorite too, although I do love The Fellowship. Two Towers is definitely the third favorite of the 3.
I feel like I'm the backward one, because I would go 3-2-1. But that's just me.
Okay. I would go 2-3-3. No, I would go 1-3 or 3-1-2. So there's only 2 slots available for me, is all.
That is what it is.
All right.
We'll be right back for our ratings, but first, here's the trailer for next week's movie. Switching gears, we're going to be talking about Yoon Song-ho's 2016 zombie film, Train to Busan.
이상한 사람이 하나 타고 있는 것 같은데.
팀장님, 여기 11호차 응급 환자 발생했습니다.
너 혼자만 찾아있어? 알려주세요. 아직까지 남의 안에 열려있다니까. 우리 그냥 이것들 달고 부산으로 갑시다, 바로. 지금 몇 칸? 코로나 끝나면 들어와라. 당신을 봐봐. 지금 무슨 일이 벌어지고 있는지 몰라? 우리 열차는 더 이상 부산으로 운행할 수가 없게 됐습니다.
Letterboxd, Andy. You've heard of Letterboxd. It's our favorite social media network for movie lovers. You hang out over at Letterboxd. You can do things like write your own reviews of your favorite movies. You can keep a diary of movies that you like and when you watch them, so you can see what movies you watched and when. And you can read all your friends' reviews of their movies and share those reviews. It's just a great place. If you just love movies and want to share your love of movies, Letterboxd is the place to go. And if you find you love it and you want to remove the ads and support the fantastic Kiwi team that brings Letterboxd to you, you can just head over to letterboxd.com and upgrade to a pro or patron membership. And using the code NEXTREEL at checkout will save you 20%. You can also, we've built that into a little URL for you at thenextreel.com/letterboxd. That will whisk you over to the checkout page with that 20% off. Already applied. Works for renewals as well. Andy, what are you going to do? You had a quibble. You actually used the word quibble. I wonder if that chipped away at your star rating for this movie.
It doesn't at all. I love this film ridiculously. Even with my quibbles, I still end up loving it. So 5 stars and a heart. I'd give it 6 if I could.
I love this film ridiculously, he says. I also love it ridiculously. 5 stars and a heart for me too. Why not? I'm here.
There you go.
All right.
Well, don't forget, visit thenextreel.com/letterboxd to get your patron or pro membership. It does work for renewals as well. And don't forget, we also have membership. You can learn more at thenextreel.com/membership. We have early access to shows that are ad-free. Plus, we have tons of bonus episodes. For April and May this year, we're returning to the Infernal Affairs franchise. And then for June and July, we're looking at The Hustler and The Color of Money. So should be some fun conversations about those movies there. So what did you think about The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King? We would love to hear your thoughts. You just go over to our Discord community, hop into the Show Talk channel, and we'll be having a conversation this week. We'd love to get your thoughts.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andy.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
Mine's a little bit long.
Okay, mine is not.
It's not that long. It's a paragraph. Can I set you up and then you do it?
Sure.
I'll go first, then you go second. Okay. It's good. We figured it out. Here we go. This is a 5-star review from Lindsay. I gotta take a deep breath for this. The moment where Frodo is hanging off of a cliff holding on with one hand and looks up at Sam, and Sam reaches out for him to take his hand, and Frodo doesn't want to at first, but Sam urges him, so he tries, but he can't get a grip because of how bloodied his hands are, so he looks down at the fire below and looks back up at Sam with such a tired sadness that it pierces my soul, and Sam can see from that expression that Frodo wants to just let go so badly, that he wants the journey to end now, but he will not allow his friend to go like that in this place, so he cries out and pleads one more time for Frodo not to let go and take his hand, and Frodo listens because it's Sam, and he finds the strength and grabs Sam's hand and pulls up on the cliff into Sam's arms. Basically what I'm trying to say is that The Lord of the Rings is the best love story of all time. That's sweet.
There are plenty of comments that
many of those
certainly reiterate that point for sure.
What do you got?
I'm going low. I went to a 0.5 star by Geordie Singer, who has this to say. This is the most horrible movie series. I absolutely hate how they treat my poor King Smeagol. They are so hypocritical for how they treat Frodo versus how they treat my man Smeagol. I would probably rate a Smeagol's redemption story 5 out of 5 because I love him.
That's awesome. We saw
my man
movies.
Smeagol.
My man Smeagol. Oh, thanks, Letterboxd. It is hard to believe we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, you're telling me. Producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you, and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
The originals page at thenextreel.com/originals links to the source material from all of our adapted film discussions. Purchasing through our links support the show at no extra cost to you.
In season 12, the focus was big franchises and series. We covered both Paddington films, adapted from the beloved children's book character created by Michael Bond.
Oh, I love those films so much.
Hugh Grant is perfect.
For our Pitch Perfect series, the first film was adapted from Mickey Rapkin's nonfiction book about collegiate a cappella competitions.
It's like the short story of my life, literally. I lived college a cappella.
Sing it, brother.
I lived college a cappella.
I didn't mean literally.
You know who you're talking to, right? The Twilight Saga dominated the season with 5 films adapted from Stephenie Meyer's vampire romance novels, Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, and the 2 Breaking Dawn parts.
Dominated with awkward romance and nonsense logic is more like it.
That too.
Another Thin Man brought us back to Dashiell Hammett's only Thin Man sequel based on other Hammett material, The Farewell Murder, that wasn't just based on the characters from the first film.
We talked about Trainspotting and its sequel, T2 Trainspotting, adapted from Irvine Welsh's novels.
I hate the sequel's name.
I do too.
And the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy adapted from J.R.R. Tolkien's epic fantasy series.
Love these.
Extended editions all the way, baby.
Plus, all the Mission Impossible films based on the 1960s TV series.
And we've still got at least one more to go.
Members got to hear us chat about The Hustler and The Color of Money, adapted from Walter Tevis's books.
Get all of these books and more at our originals page, thenextreel.com/originals.
Start your next read from the movies we've covered at thenextreel.com/originals.